Mouth breathing doesn't look great, but it's functional.
Jalal Khan, thanks for coming on the podcast. Please could you begin with an introduction of who you are and your areas of expertise, please?
Thanks so much for having me, Owen. Areas of expertise. Probably a few areas which are really interesting for me. By profession, I'm a dentist, and part of my nature is to continually search for a better way of doing things, but also sometimes looking backwards to find out what we have forgotten in order to move forwards in the right direction within the various areas of interest that are mine. Obviously, dentistry is one, but overall health, general well-being is another interest of mine, and understanding how the body actually works as a open quantum thermodynamic system. And so, upon realizing and learning how the body actually works, it was a massive paradigm shift for me in applying the principles of quantum medicine, quantum health to my own life, and then also starting to share that with others.
Yeah, awesome. I think I'd like to start with I think it's Weston A. Price went to a lot of like indigenous cultures and saw they all had like very good teeth. So why, I guess, as like a broad view, why do so many people seem to be having crowded, crooked teeth these days?
So, why do people have crowded teeth? That's a really great question, Owen. And there are three main reasons that people are aware of that could be the drivers behind crowded teeth. And one of them is that we're not eating foods that are chewy enough. So, we're not actually stimulating the jaw bones to actually develop under tension. The second reason is that we have a, we have a society of children who are growing up with allergies, and that may be allergies to foods, allergies to environmental toxins, chemicals, pesticides, etc. And that starts to create nasal obstructions or blockages in the nose, which make it very difficult for the child to breathe. That forces them to then mouth breathe as a natural compensation in order for them to survive. But the problem with mouth breathing is that it takes the tongue out of the equation when it comes to driving the growth of the upper jaw, because the tongue needs to be pressing up against the roof of the mouth, like yours probably is while you're listening to me. But how can that be happening if you're needing to have your mouth kept open in order for you to breathe? So, yeah, mouth breathing because of nasal obstruction is the second commonly known reason. And the third is something I guess it's to do with the fact that not enough children are being breastfed or not being breastfed for long enough. And I do always preface that by saying that very easy for me as a male to say that, because I know that there are definitely difficulties that some mothers have in trying to successfully breastfeed their children. But I guess my message to those is that it's not the be all and end all if they can't, from at least a jaw development perspective. But the most important reason, in my opinion, and perhaps the most overlooked, is the fact that you can't have jaws grow optimally in a cranium that is locked. And so that's the fourth reason, but perhaps the most important one, which very few dentists around the world are able to appreciate. And there's probably something we may need to spend a bit of time on. What do I actually mean by the term a locked cranium? Happy to delve into that if that's of interest to you. But yeah, for me, those are the four reasons. What is the most important to me, the one that I look for the most, is definitely a locked cranium.
Yeah, I think that'd be good to go into that a bit more. What do you mean by a locked cranium? And then I guess also why do dentists not really take that into account or don't really think about that?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, what happens is our cranium is essentially the head or the skull is composed of several bones, and these bones articulate with each other or join and interact with each other via something called sutures. And sutures are thought to be, in the centralized medical paradigm, they're thought to be fused almost, where there's actually no movement or um, there's no communication within the sutures. But in actual fact, there is actually a cranial bone movement through these sutures, where, for instance, my temporal bones and my parietal bones, which are on the left and right sides of my head, they can they can flex out and extend back in in a rhythmic motion, similar to how when our lungs are inflating and deflating while we are breathing. So if that's happening all throughout our head, we then have to think about what is that motion of the cranial bones actually doing. And what it's doing is it's draining lymph from the brain, which is known as the glymphatic system. And so we have a lot of people that are struggling with brain fog. And one of the main reasons why they're struggling with brain fog is that they're not having that optimal drainage of the lymph from the brain, because the motion of the cranial bones is not optimal. So the other thing that the cranial bones do is that they facilitate growth of the jaws out of the face. And one just needs to do a bit of research and study into the essentials of facial growth to understand that the jaws actually grow down and forwards out of the cranium. Every every baby or every infant pretty much has a flat face, and then the jaws grow forwards and out of the head. So what could possibly be driving that growth of the jaws and the face forwards and out? It's actually the base of the cranium, and that requires an understanding of how the bones at the back of the head, like the occipital bone, interact with the sphenoid bone, which is the keystone middle bone of the head. And from the sphenoid bone, we have the maxilla, which is the upper jaw that hangs off it. So I'm starting to talk a little bit almost like osteopathic talk at the moment, what cranial osteopaths love to talk about, which is all of these cranial bones. And the cool thing is that these cranial bones are connected to something called the sacrum, which is the tailbone. And they're connected via this very tight sheet of a membrane, which is called the dura mater, which literally means tough mother. And this dura mater wraps around the entire spinal cord to encase it, and it anchors into the tailbone. And so the importance of understanding that is we have the tailbone now, which is part of the equation of the cranium, because if you have a kink or a bend or a twist in the tailbone, that creates a similar sort of torsion through the dura mater membrane, which then creates a compensatory twist or bend or torsion in the actual cranial bones themselves. And so if people are having tailbone injuries, or people are having injuries to their head playing rugby, a concussion, or maybe they're playing cricket and they weren't wearing a helmet and they got hit in the head by a bouncer from a fast bowler, these are the types of injuries which can actually impact the motion of the cranial bones. And that sacrum as well is also moving in sync, in rhythm with the cranial bones. So now I've kind of laid out for you what we would call a craniosacral mechanism within the body. And outside of the cranium and outside of the sacrum pass the parasympathetic nerves, which are the nerves that are associated with rest and digest. So this whole idea of calming our nervous systems down and elevating our parasympathetic nervous systems through breath work, etc., really boils down to optimizing this craniosacral mechanism. How can we do that? How can we grow our jaws properly? How can we grow our faces properly if the motion of the very bones that are driving their growth forwards is all locked up? So you basically, one of the things I like to say to my patients is you can't expand a jaw in a cranium that's not willing to receive it. And so it's literally a structural thing. It's very easy to lean on this idea of soft foods being the main driver behind why our jaws aren't growing big enough compared to 1,000 years ago or even 200 years ago. And there's definitely truth to it. There's definitely merit to it. But I guess what I like to say is that there's a lot more to the picture than just nasal obstruction, soft foods, and a lack of breastfeeding. This whole craniosacral mechanism is really critical to it all.
Yeah. So would it be accurate to say that the reason a lot of dentists don't take this into account is that we're kind of looking at the body like compartmentalized? We're looking at just the jaw and the teeth, but we're not like appreciating the fact that it relates to the tailbone and that whole kind of system down the back.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, Owen. What we have is, in centralized medicine and allied health, we've got everyone siloed in their own kind of expertises, their own specialties, and we've got dentists that are graduating from dental school that are focusing almost purely on teeth and on how to restore teeth, but they're not appreciating that the teeth are actually extensions that grow out of the bone. And I mean, I would liken every individual tooth as a bone in itself. And we've got these jaw bones which are then growing forwards and out of the cranium. And there's a paradigm of dentistry which is commonly known as functional dentistry, and these are well-meaning clinicians who have graduated in their thought from thinking that the dentistry is all about teeth and have now appreciated that it's about jaws, and behind the jaws are the airway, and so they want the airway to be optimal for their patients so that they can breathe properly while they're sleeping, so that they can sleep properly and then obviously have better health. But they've neglected to appreciate that behind the airway is the cranium, and the airway is really a functional space between the face and jaws and the cranium behind. So once you optimize the structures of the front and the back, the structure in the middle, the airway, naturally optimizes itself. And so when I work with adults and children, my focus isn't purely just on the jaws and the airway, it's actually focusing on the cranium as well, which is why I actually work with the cranial osteopath in the same room when I'm treating my patients. Because what we have then is this a union of two specialists who are both gunning for the same result for the patients, and I'm getting better results because I'm working with my cranial osteopath, and he's getting better results for his patients because he's working with me. And so it's a really nice. It's almost humbling because the greatest expression of myself as a clinician can only happen if I loop in another clinician to work alongside me. It's not an individual job.
Yeah, when I saw that, I thought it was super interesting and makes a lot of sense. It'd be cool to see more people to start doing that.
It's hard, Owen. It's hard. It's hard when you've um you've graduated from dentistry, you've spent 4 or 5 years in dental school, and you've learned all this stuff, and then to realize that a lot of it is important, but not as important as the basic foundations, much like the sun and returning to nature and everything is foundational to this whole quantum medicine paradigm, which I know you're quite familiar with. Similarly, the cranial and dental or jaw linkage is just, and that craniosacral mechanism is just as foundational to dentistry. But we've got dentists that are it's hard for them to unlearn everything that they've learned and then relearn an entirely new paradigm. But even when I say the word new paradigm, I guess there's a half truth to that, because this is really, really old dentistry that's been around for a long time. It's perhaps almost been written out of dentistry because it's just a harder way to do things. It's a slower way to do things. We don't mechanically force our way into a patient's jaw to expand it. Dentists like myself, we use appliances that actually mimic biology. And so the growth force and the healing force is a lot more gentler. So it might take 18 to 24 months to achieve the results that we want to achieve rather than get it all done in 6 months.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about, you said that I think babies or just young children will breathe through their mouths if they're obstructed in the nasal passages. And there's kind of been this trend of like kind of taping your mouth at night. And I saw you did a tweet on it that, if I understand correctly, you used to think this was a good idea, but now you're not
Yeah,
so sure. Could you talk a bit about that, please?
sure. So mouth taping is commonly used as a health hack to help restore optimal nasal breathing. And the thinking behind it makes sense. When you're trying to inflate your lungs by breathing in, it's like you're trying to blow up a balloon. But if there's a hole in the balloon via your mouth, because you're trying to breathe in through your nose, how are you able to successfully blow up that balloon if there's a hole in it? You can't. And so by sealing that hole off by mouth taping, we are then encouraged or forced to breathe in through our nose, which helps to pressurize the airway, adding in all the other benefits such as nitric oxide being released from the paranasal sinuses and all that type of stuff being drawn down deep into the lungs, not just the top 2/3, but the bottom third as well. And this is all well and good, but I feel now with new learnings and a new lens on all of this, that it's still not addressing the root cause, which is that the jaws are not optimally developed and positioned, the tongue is not operating functionally, and neither are the lips and the facial muscles. And so the right way to do it, the right way to fix the issue is not to mouth tape, literally put a band-aid over the mouth in order to create that band-aid approach, but it is actually to retrain the muscles of the face. That's the lips, that's the tongue, that's the mentalis muscle down here, that's the orbicularis oris, which is a ring-shaped muscle that wraps around your lips. It's to restore that optimal cranial bone movement. It's to restore the optimal jaw size and the optimal jaw position, and then use that, so kind of craniofacial or dentofacial orthopedics plus myofunctional therapy, to correct the system rather than just a band-aid approach. I mean, I get it that it's really successful for people in the short term, but as a long-term solution, I think there are better ways that things should be done.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because when I came across it, I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." But then I did start to think like, well, maybe like it's your body's making you breathe through your mouth for a reason.
Spot on. And I think that insight that you've just said is something which we all need to appreciate, that we might do things as people, we might be doing things in order to continue to function, and these things might not look great. Mouth breathing doesn't look great, but it's functional. So I was consulting with a child earlier this week, and the mother was really, really hard on the child about mouth breathing, and she was kind of saying, I'm always kind of picking on and making sure that she's not mouth breathing. And when she's in the car and I look at her in the rear view mirror, and like her lips are open, I'm like, close your mouth, etc. And she, like, it was almost borderline pushing the child too much. And I said to the mother, I said, you're basically asking the child to do something that she needs to do in order to survive. So how must you be making her feel when you're taking away from her one very key important survival mechanism that she needs right now in order for her to continue to function? And when I said it like that, the mother's view of the entire situation completely changed, because she realized that she was actually making matters worse for her child and cultivating a greater anxiety, because she was literally taking away from her the very functional compensation that she needs. And then another example of that is crowded teeth. Crowded teeth don't look good, but they're functional. So they're what I would call they would call a functional misalignment. They're functional, they work for the patient, but they're misaligned. But what we do is, and we have to appreciate, but what I mean by that is the cranium and the body and the posture and the ascending inputs from the feet and their pelvis, etc., have positioned those teeth in a particular way. They've been rotated this way. One tooth is a bit more forward, one tooth is a bit more back, etc. And all of this has been dictated by the body, because the body's using its intelligence, it's nature's intelligence. Nature doesn't make mistakes. And so when you start to appreciate that those crowded teeth are actually positioned there by the body, they may look misaligned and they might not look good, but they're actually functional. But we as a profession, and even society itself, is encouraging the profession to straighten these teeth without actually focusing on the other parts of the body that may be driving these teeth to be positioned the way that they are. So we go from a functional misalignment to a dysfunctional alignment.
Yeah, that makes sense. And why would the body, like, what benefit would there be to having like misaligned teeth? Is that to allow easier breathing or something?
That's a really great question. I guess what it really boils down to is, we as hunter gatherers need to be able to walk forward with our eyes parallel to the floor. We need to be able to continue to breathe. Our head needs to know how to stay on top of the spine so that we can continue to do what we need to do as hunter gatherers. And so we're using all these cues from further down in order for our head to know what to do. And those cues come from the feet, and those cues also come from the teeth. You see, like, we've got arches in our feet. We also have another place in our body where we have two arches coming together. and that is the upper dental arch of teeth and the lower dental arch of teeth. Now you have two arches banging against each other, and what they're doing is they're sending the forces of banging against each other, biting against each other throughout the entire cranium, and that the cranial bones are receiving that information, and that basically a lot of the mouth is about proprioception, which is your sense of space. Where are you in space? And so the head then knows where it is in space because of that feedback coming in from the teeth. So yeah, I guess those are really key things that we need to think about when we're thinking about misaligned teeth, because those misaligned teeth, whilst they may not look nice, are functional because they're functional from a postural perspective. They're functional from a respiration perspective.
Mm. Yeah. When I interviewed Jack Cruz, I believe he said that a lot of people in the UK have, I think, class 2 malocclusion, which I think is an overbite. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And I think he said that was related to either low vitamin D or low amount of sun. Can you talk a bit about that?
So look, I mean, there's perhaps some merit to that. I still feel that the structural aspect of things is much more profound than the functional aspect of things when it comes to teeth. And so it's not to say that light isn't important, vitamin D isn't important, because it definitely is important towards even POMC when it comes to dental development. There's no doubt about it. But I think the structural aspect of things is often ignored, and perhaps the most important aspect, which is why I'm kind of big on the fact that nutrition and eating hard foods, yes, it's important, but it's more about getting the tongue to behave the way that it needs to, having the child breathing optimally, having those cranial bones moving optimally in order for the jaws to grow perfectly. That being said as well, most people in Western society have class 2 malocclusions. It's not just a UK thing or a British thing. It's globally in Western society, I would say. And the reason for that is, I guess, the nature of the environments that the children are growing up in.
Okay. Yeah. So do you think structure is the most important? Fair enough. Cool. So we can maybe pivot a little bit towards like oral hygiene, because I'm not 100% sure on this, but I don't believe you're a massive fan of fluoride.
No, I'm not,
Why is that?
because it's a dielectric blocker that steals electrons from oxygen in our water networks, which reduces our body's ability to hold electric charge and have communication within the quantum communication highway that is our fascia. So
Okay.
fluoride is the most electronegative ion. That means it has the highest affinity for electrons, more than any other ion. And because of that, it steals electrons from everything around it. So when you introduce fluoride into the water, you introduce something which is going to steal electrons from oxygen. So this reduces our electronegativity. And in the quantum health space, we need to be as electronegative as possible. We need to have as much redox as possible. And redox is based on how many free electrons we have on hand. But if they're all being captured by fluoride, then it just reduces our body's ability to hold electric charge.
Okay. What would you suggest people do instead then to make sure they keep their mouth like healthy?
Brush your teeth, use a water flosser, coconut oil pulling, the simple stuff. We don't need to overcomplicate things.
Yeah. So coconut oil pulling, that's when you kind of almost wash your mouth with coconut oil.
Yeah, you take a teaspoon of a good quality coconut oil, and more often than not, it's going to be solid, and you kind of bite through it. Takes about 30 seconds to become liquidy, and then you just start to pass it through your teeth, keeping your lips closed, and as you're just pushing it in between your teeth and pulling it back in, and pushing it in between your teeth and pulling it back in, and you just do that repeatedly. 30 seconds is not enough. It needs to be a good, 3, 4, 5 minutes, and then you spit it out at the end. because you don't want to swallow that. But it's really good at hydrating the oral mucosa. It's really good at optimizing the microbiome composition within the mouth, and it's a great way to start the day.
Yeah, could you? So we talked a bit about this already, but how does the jaw and like the teeth can affect the posture of the rest of the body? Because I know people can even get like back pain and I think maybe even knee pain. It can really affect a lot of the whole posture of the body, if I'm correct.
It really boils down to that craniosacral mechanism that I was talking about, because when you have when you have jaws that are misaligned or teeth that are not working cohesively with the rest of the system because of a trauma to the head, which could be a birth trauma, it could be a sports trauma, it could be a whiplash or a motor vehicle accident or something to that effect, it impacts the optimal movement of the cranial bones, which then send compensatory twist down the dura mater, which is wrapping around the spinal cord and anchoring into the sacrum. And so then we get a sacrum that twists to the left or the right, or overextends or over flexes. And because the hips are joined at the back toward into the sacrum, that's how you start to get hip misalignment, because the sacrum is pushed out of optimal alignment because of the dura mater tension, because of the cranial bones being locked. So that's literally the exact mechanism or pathway how you start to have how you start to have compensations throughout the body. But I mean, there are other things as well, like breathing difficulties can impact how the ribs are behaving whilst breathing, and that's how you can start to get shoulder issues as well. Um, there's a whole host of things, and that's why I work with a cranial osteopath who not only works on the cranium and the sacrum, but also knows how to work on the rest of the body. And we loop in kinesiology as well. And this allows us to really hone in on what are the actual parts of the body that are causing the issues further upstream around the head and the jaws, and also vice versa. What parts of the body upstream are causing issues downstream?
Yeah, a lot of the main things you mentioned that you think have caused like crooked teeth and mouth issues are kind of in the development stages. So if someone's already an adult, what can they kind of do to try and improve their, I guess, mouth posture and the rest of their body posture?
Um, this is not medical advice because every case is independent of others, and I commonly get asked on social media, these are my issues, what do I do? But I think it's really important for people in the predicament where they're fully grown and they're struggling with their mouth or their bite or TMJ issues or whole body posture issues, which they feel are being set off by the mouth, that they enlist the services of a dentist who is able to think along these lines of not just jaws and airway, but also cranial. And then also in sync with whatever the dentist is doing, with whatever appliances they're using, work with a cranial osteopath to help ensure that the cranial bones are playing ball with any of the dental work that's being done.
Yeah, okay. So I think we'll go a bit towards more the quantum side now.
Sure.
Could you kind of explain quantum entanglement and specifically with like people?
So quantum entanglement is this concept in quantum physics, which is proven, where you have you may have different quantum particles which could be miles away from each other, or thousands and thousands of kilometers away from each other, but they're fundamentally interlinked or connected and entangled. And so what happens is, if something were to occur to one of those particles, then the exact same thing would occur to the other particle instantaneously without any lag whatsoever. And this has been proven multiple times within science and physics journals and research. So there's no real question about its validity. It's definitely real. And if we extrapolate that from subatomic particles into space-time reality that we see in front of us, you and I quantum entangling right now, we can extrapolate that because we have this fractal nature of the universe where patterns that we see, phenomena that we see at small scales, are repeated at bigger and bigger and bigger scales as we move out. So if we're able to have quantum entanglement between quantum particles, we can then, by default, by logic of the fractal nature of the universe, have quantum entanglement with other individuals. And classic cases of that are, I mean, I'm sure everyone that's listening to this has had a moment where they were thinking of someone, and that person may have sent them an SMS or an email at the time that they were thinking of them. That is quantum entanglement in the modern world.
Yeah, so it's like at a very fundamental level, we are literally entangled almost by physics with people, like in the relationships we have.
We certainly are, which is why the people that we hang around with the most are quite important in terms of how we grow, how we develop, how we experience life. And so the people we entangle with can have positive impacts on our life, or they can have negative impacts on our life. We've all been through moments where we may have been in a bad circle at school, and that started to reflect in our behavior or in the way that we were playing sports, or how well we were playing sports. And once we changed circles and made that brave decision to entangle with people that were more suited to where we were headed, life started to change. So quantum entanglement is perhaps one of my favorite quantum phenomena. There's a lot of romance about it. There's a lot of hope that is held within it, with one's willingness to change their entanglements. And I guess it also pays homage to everyone's history, because we may have entangled with people that we have moved on from, but they're still an important part of our life. And the lessons that we drew from entangling with them will stay with us forever.
Yeah. What about like trauma? Because I think Jack Cruz may have talked about this a little bit in his podcast with Andrew Huberman, but yeah, how does that relate?
Well, trauma is essentially something that can be stored within our bodies, and the place that is stored is within the water networks, within the fascia. And so that is a quantum entanglement that's stored. I commonly say that memory is essentially just a library of quantum entanglement, and trauma is essentially a memory. So, trauma definitely an important quantum entanglement, which has negative connotations, but perhaps has positive connotations associated with the growth that emerges from releasing that trauma, releasing that emotion, and growing forwards and moving forwards because of that release.
Yeah, and like, would it be possible then to like almost untangle that?
I don't think you can necessarily untangle entirely, but you can, I guess you could have a quantum leap, a disassociation from a past trauma or a past entanglement. Probably hard, but definitely possible. Um, do we seek to, should we be seeking to disassociate ourselves from past entanglements? I don't necessarily think so. I think they all happen for a reason. They're part of our journey, and it's just something that em- it's something that we embrace and we respect, and we always remember as we move forward.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good point actually. Yeah, you once said that universal consciousness is stored in the water in everybody. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that is consciousness is this field of intelligence, this universality, which has to express itself in some way. And I feel that consciousness uses light as its instrument to express itself. And that light has to dance with something. And the most common thing that light can dance with and store the information that light carries within it into something else, that is water. Water is that optimal medium that can store information carried within light. So that's why I feel that or consciousness, the possibilities of consciousness, the healing capacities that consciousness holds are held within our water networks, which is why I believe that our bodies have the innate capacity to heal from anything if given the right inputs, if given the right environment, because that can unlock the intelligence that is captured within the water networks. It also ties back to why the craniosacral mechanism is so important in the work that I do with my osteopath, because one of the things that it does is it pumps cerebrospinal fluid, which is an ultrafiltrate of blood, down the spinal column and back up into the brain. And so, if we are pumping the ultrafiltrate of blood, which is like borderline in almost entirely water, with obviously electrolytes and a few other bits and pieces within it, down the spinal cord and back up into the brain, isn't that like an energy in motion? Isn't that able to unlock the healing capacities within that water to help feed the nervous system what it needs in order to then show itself in the physical body with the healing that we see in people? I believe so.
Yeah, I think Rick Rubin said something along the lines of that he thinks there's a collective consciousness, and that like our brains or like our thoughts are almost like a satellite dish, almost like catching, like you said earlier, you think of someone, and then you get a text from them or something. Would you agree with that kind of idea, that we almost catch ideas from somewhere?
100%. That collective consciousness is the universal consciousness that I'm referring to, this universal field. As Rumi once said, we are the ocean in a drop.
Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah. Okay. Let's go. I'm interested in grounding as well. What's kind of like the mechanism of grounding? Because I kind of get the concept, but like, do we know for sure that this is definitely having an effect?
Of course it is, because the ancient man didn't wear shoes, and they didn't wear shoes for a reason. So what grounding does is it connects us to nature. It's a way for us to harvest electrons from the earth. That's why our feet have sweat glands on them, in order to create water, which acts as the optimal conducting medium for electrons to pass through, for us to upload electrons. Those electrons are able to increase the redox of our system, which increases the ability for electric charge to pass. It increases the ability for the biochemistry reactions to happen. It's a great way to reduce inflammation, because we are increasing the electron density within our system. It's a great way to dissipate non-native electromagnetic frequencies down back into the earth, much like the earth plug of a power socket does. So it's not necessarily just about uploading electrons, but it's also about expelling non-native electromagnetic frequencies.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit more about non-native electromagnetic frequencies and kind of the risks you see with that?
Yeah, I mean, non-native electromagnetic frequencies are man-made frequencies, which are a lot more now than they used to be. I think compared to about 100 or 110 years ago, we have a million times more electromagnetic frequencies than no, a billion times more electromagnetic frequencies than we had 110 years ago. And so we've now created this microwave of fake frequencies that are making it very, very difficult for us to live healthily, because they are interacting and jamming up the signaling mechanisms within our cells. So these electromagnetic frequencies, examples of that are things like Wi-Fi, which is 2.4 gigahertz or 2.4 billion hertz. Okay, so 2.4 billion, and our brain operates at 7.83 waves per second. So not 2.4 billion, 7.83 is what our brain operates at, the alpha waves. And we've got Wi-Fi that's 2.4 billion. We've got 3G and 4G and 5G. We've got Bluetooth. All of these things are disrupting our brain's ability to interact with the Earth's Schumann resonance, which happens to be 7.83 hertz. So we've actually been wired to be in sync with the Earth's core, with the Earth's magnetic resonance. And when we are bathing in this microwave of non-visible light, which is man-made, then it impedes our body's ability to get in sync with the Earth.
Yeah, and what's kind of like the research like? Because I've heard, I know in some, I think rats, they put like a phone under some cages and it makes them freak out sometimes. But some rats seem to be fine with it. So, yeah, do we know that much about it? Have we like tested that much in like labs or anything?
We've tested non-native electromagnetic frequencies quite heavily. It's just that the research to support what we're saying about it is not necessarily coming to the fore, coming to mainstream, but the research is out there, as has been for decades. Look at the work of I think it's Andrew Marino. He wrote a fabulous book about all of this. Robert Becker has also written a fabulous book about all of this, and even in his book Body Electric, towards the end of it, he talks about the towards the back of that book, he talks about some of the measurements and some of the awareness that the U.S. Defense Force had about the non-native electromagnetic frequencies. It is a threat to our future, and the most concerning thing is that I don't see it going away anywhere because we've become so heavily dependent on communication via these electromagnetic frequencies. So, with that in mind, we just have to work really, really hard to mitigate our exposures and do what we can to dissipate all of the frequencies that we collect across the day that are unhealthy for us.
Yeah, I definitely am interested in reading more about this. One thing I did think was interesting, I can't remember where I saw it, but people say that, or well, some people say that like, oh, if you have your phone near you, it's not really that bad or anything. But when you're on a plane, that you have to put your phone on airplane mode. So it's like, well, okay, so it's probably doing something, right? If they think it can affect the plane's kind of frequencies that the plane's using.
100%. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess I'm interested in using the sun responsibly because in a lot of the quantum area, there's a lot of people like, I mean, sun's a big part of it. But yeah, do we want to be avoiding sunburns? Because I asked Jack Cruz about sunburns and he said he doesn't think it's been properly studied. But it just makes me think of the nature doesn't make mistakes thing, and that is this not a sign that like, oh, we don't want this because it's painful?
I think there's a limit to how much sun we all need. Some people with darker skin, darker complexion need more sun than those that have got fairer complexion. But there is still a concept of like safe and responsible sun exposure. Like if you're ever on a farm and do you see all the animals out in the sun all day long, or do you ever see cows having a rest underneath a tree to get some shade? It's the latter. Animals have that intelligence within them as well, and so we have this tendency to just be kind of absolutists. We're either entirely all sun all day, or we're no sun whatsoever because it's going to kill us. But I think a balance of everything is important for someone that's on a health journey that's reintroducing sun exposure. It's important to be safe and responsible about it, and that involves, you know, regular morning sun exposures with as much skin showing as possible to help increase the exposures to the infrared light and that early UVA light to help program the hormones, to help program that melanin production, which helps to then bolster one's skin to damage from UV light later on in the day. These are all important steps. It's about understanding the different frequencies of light that are in the sun at different times of the day and using those for what they're used best for.
Yeah, and I just think, even from my own experience, that I can like feel it. Like at first, you go into the sun, it feels quite nice, but after a while, it can get like a bit uncomfortable, and you might start to go a little bit pink, and you're like, okay, this is probably enough now, and go to the shade.
That's it. You just got to use your intuition and your understanding and let your skin tell you when it's time to hop out of the sun.
Yeah. And then I guess probably the final thing I'll ask is, I'm interested in, I guess, why do you think the, well, I guess, carnivore slash quantum communities are interested in Bitcoin?
I think that's a really good question. I think it boils down to the fact that these new paradigms of health are fundamentally decentralized because they're trying to seek out the truth or find a message which is not being parroted by mainstream health. And whilst we can tend to get caught in the traps of being dogmatic about carnivore versus vegan versus quantum, etc., at the end of the day, all of those are still trying to be decentralized in some way. And as any free market, the best approach to health will fundamentally prevail, whatever that may be. And it's very similar to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is decentralized and there's obviously lots of cryptocurrencies out there. Um, but there's only ever going to be one major cryptocurrency that emerges as the primary one because it will be based on proof of work and it'll be based on physical power projection and it'll be based on the security that the network holds, which I believe that to be Bitcoin. So that's why I see so much similarities between quantum health, quantum medicine, and Bitcoin because there's a proof of work that's required. There's a stability and security to the system that's built into Mother Nature and built into the Bitcoin network, and so these similarities are pretty hard to ignore.
Yeah, it's like decentralized food and decentralized money. Yeah, I love it. Um, Thanks, Jalal. This has been a really interesting conversation. Where can people go to find more of your work?
Thanks for having me, Owen. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. People can find me on Instagram and Twitter. My handle for both is K2Calibre, K2CALIBRE, and I have a website, k2calibre.com.
Yeah, cheers, Jalal. And why is it K2 Caliber? Just real quick.
Thank you for asking. K2Calibre is paying homage to my Pakistani heritage. One of the mountains in the Karakoram mountains is called K2,
Oh,
and it is the second highest mountain in the world, the highest mountain in Pakistan. And what I like about K2, and I dream to climb it one day, is that it is more dangerous than the Everest, than Mount Everest. So, out of all the people that have tried to climb K2 and all the people that have tried to climb Everest, a higher proportion of climbers have died trying to climb K2 than Everest. So, it's a deadlier climb, it's a more dangerous climb, it's a harder climb. And I just want my journey to be of the caliber of K2, which is not necessarily the one with all the glory, the highest, the best, the most famous, so to speak, but just someone that plugs away, pushing for the truth, and doing the best that they can for their patients.
yeah, super interesting. I'm glad I asked now. Yeah, I've heard of K2 before, but I never really thought to make the connection that that would be the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Jalal.
Thank you so much, Owen.
Oh, have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Goodbye.
Thank you.